You are listening to Booming Your Bottom Line, arguably the #1 small business podcast for owners who want to reach aging baby boomer consumers, create amazing customer experiences, and grow their companies in the process. Hosted by veterans of the aging boomer niche, Mark Hager and Aaron Murphy. These two are your experts to help you navigate the silver tsunami and dominate your local market. In the next few minutes, you are guaranteed insight, tips, and actionable information to help drive your company to even greater success. Get ready to supercharge your business.
Welcome to Booming Your Bottom Line, a weekly podcast where we talk about how to start and grow or expand your existing small business by serving the specific needs of the aging baby boomer consumer. Their numbers are growing by 10,000 a day, and we've been studying and helping understand this market segment together for over 20 years. I'm Mark Hager, and with me is my co-host, Aaron Murphy. Good morning, Aaron.
Morning, Mark. How you doing?
Doing great.
Good. Well, last week we started this 3-part series on accessible businesses for an aging population. We talked about the opportunity that is to you, the business owner, and what you need to do to be ready for that and the boomer consumer. We mentioned that this is a mindset shift, but over that next 3 decades that you're in business, it's got to be a must for your organization. If you're going to reach that boomer consumer, get ahead of your competition. Everybody's studying how to do this right now. Make lucrative decisions that set yourself apart by being more caring, more giving, and more available to them as their needs change, and at the end, more profitable.
Right. So
if you missed segment 1, just for the sake of staying in tune with this series sequentially, go back and look at podcast 16 over at agentplace.com/small business, and all the rest of our podcasts. There's been a ton of great information, and it's a free resource to you as a business owner. And if you want to subscribe with us, you can do that either on iTunes or Stitcher as well.
All right, so this week, we're getting into part 2 of what it means to have an accessible business. Now, this is more than just wider doorways or parking spots, which you're going to find out. This episode, we're talking about physical accessibility for your store, shop, office, or wherever you have customers come see you. It's going to be an eye-opener for all of our small business owners, that is for sure.
Yep. Before we get into this, I do want to reiterate, everything we're going to talk about today here is really good for any customer, okay? There aren't things that you should change specifically just for older customers, nor would you want to imply that. When I speak on stages around the country about universal design or accessible design, I don't just refer to aging, okay? I talk about how I've torn my Achilles when playing basketball. And guess what? Stairs suck, okay, at any age.
That's right.
When your knees or your feet or your ankles, whatever, 28 or 88 years old, it hurts. Doesn't matter. And I also mention, that cheap, crappy spec house faucet where you pull the knob out to get the water on and turn it for hot and cold. That's just as hard for my daughter to use as it is for your grandma. So
Yep.
This isn't just about aging. This is about ease of use, okay? Now, I got to get geeky here for a second and talk a little bit about where did accessible come from. I don't want to get too deep into architecture stuff, but I just want you to have a little bit of background of what it means. I personally, as an architect, have tons of math in my head about reach distance and wheelchair turning and all that, but that I don't want to do that today. What I do want to explain is just simply that the American Disabilities Act came out and was signed in 1990 by the U.S. Congress, and it is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination based on disability, just the same way the Civil Rights Act in 1964 made discrimination on race, sex, religion, national origin stuff, against the law, okay? So there's the concept there. ADA disabilities include both mental and physical conditions, and it doesn't have to be severe or permanent. And you still have to treat that person equally in your workplace. So that's the point there. There's something called the International Code Council, and they oversee the accessibility portions of the codes that I use, like an IBC, the International Building Code, when I'm designing buildings for equality and access, whether it's elevators or the stairs and handrails or whatever, okay? So ANSI section A117.1, the 2009 edition right now, is the standard for accessible and usable buildings. And that's the main area of the code that makes it into how we design buildings and stuff like that. So there's a quick background. Let's get over the whole geek architecture stuff and back to everyday language, which is, what does your client have to do in your store or your office?
Right.
Okay. They have to get in your place of business. Okay. I don't know if you've heard about Hollister and the malls. They got sued for having that entry sequence be 2 steps up in a platform and 2 steps down. You know, lots of money and wasted time spent. Call me. I'll tell you what the rest of the story was and how it turned out. But what a waste of time and money and energy to have that conversation. So you have to let them in your store. They have to navigate your space. That's paths, sights, sounds, signage, everything. They have to find your products or your people if they need assistance. They have to be able to reach your products, carry them, pay for them, get their purchases to their mode of transportation, whether that's car or transit. And then totally other topic, which Mark and I know a ton about too, but it's a separate episode, is they have to get their stuff home and on the shelf. And that's more about the home accessibility. But anyway, I know I talked fast right there, just a ton of information, and it's kind of oversimplified, but I want you to just get the gist as a start point, okay? They have to get in, find what they're looking for, find help if they need it, pay for it, and get back out with their stuff.
Exactly. So let's take it from the top. You know, we all know that you have to have the right amount of, handicap parking, or you should. The zoning code required it when your building was built. But what about parking for older people who have reduced stamina or other health issues? You know, should you leave them out of the mix? Should perhaps rethinking your parking arrangements, to get a number of regular parking spaces who are just for older consumers, might be something that you should do. You have to think about your customers first. That is a silent customer service right there.
Very good. Yep. Mark, can I do one more thing? I want to explain to folks, just from personal experience, something I've been through. I think it's going to be helpful for them.
Sure.
To know that I've done this, and it'll relate to what we're talking about. So twice I've been asked to put on what's called an aging suit. Most people probably don't even know that exists. I've done it once in Tokyo, and I've done it once in Seattle. Toto, that does bath products and stuff, I went to their R&D department for a television show about Japan's architecture for aging, and then a place called Abodian in Seattle. What the point is that I've had to put on a costume, basically, that made me feel 25 years older, 25 pounds heavier. My eyes were yellowed and blurry. My hearing was muffled. I've had gloves on where you can't feel the edges of coins or the tactile sensations. And it was really embarrassing. Okay, there's hot lights and cameras on me, and I am sweating profusely as I'm hunched over, strapped in. I can't reach above my shoulder with my hand. If I bend down, I can't get back up. It was really an intense experience, and I think a huge value to me as a designer. And so I just want people to picture what that might feel like. Maybe we can put some pictures up on the website to embarrass me. But anyway, to feel what it's like to be older significantly, a couple decades or heavier or disabled, really sheds a lot of light on what needs to happen in a business place. And for me, it was a great experience as a designer.
Well, that's crazy. Now, I totally wish we had some video that I could just insert into the video for this podcast.
I bet.
But we'll see about getting some pictures and we can put them up.
All right.
You're right. That would give you a feeling of what it's like to be older. And especially what it would be like to have to deal with that while you're navigating anything, your home or a store or what have you. So, when you're talking about, navigating your business, your place of business, what you're doing, what you do about that, that's going to set you apart from your competition. Not everybody's going to take that leap and try to improve that area of their customer experience. But in thinking about that, here's some ideas that you could use and some of them are best practices that you could use to help improve that experience for your older customers. First, clear wide paths without stairs to the entrance and throughout your establishment. You have to be able to support people who are using canes and walkers, obviously, but you also people who are older and they have muscle problems or leg problems or hip problems or whatever, and they don't have the strength to pull themselves upstairs. Not only are you inviting a lawsuit, but you're also not serving them the best way that you can. Because if somebody falls in your business, as a business owner, we all know what that means. Potentially somebody getting hurt.
Yep.
Then you have something a lot of people don't think about is the weight of your doors. You go for a door that's minimum weight so they're easier to open. And if you do have heavier doors, then you need to look at some type of automatic or power-assisted opener for it. Mm-hmm. Entrances and aisles that have plenty of head clearance. They don't have things sticking into them, protruding into the walking path. Bright and glare-free lighting. I knew I was going to get that. And then you think about how people get around and how they find things. When you're talking about someone who's older, I'm not trying to overgeneralize. I'm just trying to give everybody the idea of what their customers are actually going to be dealing with. Let's face it, when you get older, your mind is not working as quick as it once did. It's not that there's something wrong with that person. It's just that they're not processing the information as fast. So that means that you need to make your directional and informational signs, big, high contrast colors, big letters, in a nice big font, and they have to be well lit. You can have a giant sign with big letters on it that's up in a dark area, and nobody will ever be able to use that.
That's a good point.
Nobody that's older will be able to. If you're running video in your store or your office, which I know that a lot of medical facilities are doing it now, and doctors' offices, even insurance companies and stuff like that. I've seen it in their offices where they run these promotional spots on TVs. If there's not closed captioning, not every older person is going to be able to hear that because that is fighting with the ambient noise in the room.
True.
And then any printed material that you have, or advertisements or brochures, they need to be, again, high contrast colors on solid backgrounds and with clear and large type so these people can read that and get the information that you're trying to give them. And if you're not doing that with your signage or anything that you hand out or your advertisements or whatever, you're literally wasting your money when it comes to that older consumer.
And potentially losing a client.
Exactly.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So now they're in the store. Let's talk about how they find things that they need. Now this may be a little more retail, but things do need to be within easy reach. Again, there's a lot of graphics about, how far somebody of a certain height can bend or reach above and below their waist, mm-hmm. and things like that. Okay. Price tags. I mean, think about the font of a price tag. It's probably a 6 or a 7. I mean, that's impossible once you're over, I'll admit it, even 40. And again, aisle signage and big letters, high contrast, you're going to hear that same conversation, and do the homework. It's out there, okay? But you have to apply it in your store. So, and then you got to have folks around to help, all right? And they need to be cheerful and willing to help, and right there without being overbearing. We've talked about that in a previous episode as far as, what you teach your employees and staff.
Well, in talking about finding stuff, there's also the issue of them being able to carry whatever they're buying around with them. I know a lot of stores, especially large retail or grocery stores or whatever, they have carts that people can use, but not everyone does. And it's especially true for smaller businesses. When you're talking about a customer who has reduced strength in their back and in their arms and their legs, they may not be able to carry a lot of products. They may come in to get 4 things and they can only carry 1, and maybe not even the biggest one that they came to get. And it's especially true and this sounds a little odd, but if you're someone who sells things that might be of an odd shape, an irregular shape, or maybe a little cumbersome to carry, they're not going to be able to do it. True. So you've got to give them some way, whether it's by making someone accessible to them who can come and take care of that for them, or giving them some mode of transporting that thing through the store, whether it's a cart or some kind of bin on rollers or whatever. You know, that's something that we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, when it comes for them to actually make the purchase, you know, this is a sticking point that I personally have as a consumer, but it is so important when you're talking about older consumers, and that is you have got to get rid of the wait times. You've got to at least strictly minimize them, because an older person cannot stand in line for 5 minutes holding all this stuff, even if they have it in a basket. You know, there has to be some accommodations for that. Plus, it's going to go a long way towards building that rapport with them. I'm not saying that you necessarily need to have an older consumer only checkout line, although I don't know that would be a bad idea, depending on, how many of those customers you have. But when you're talking about wait lines, you're hacking everybody off if there's a long wait line, especially the older consumer. But I'll move on from that. And then you have to think about the counter heights where they're placing their things to check out. It needs to be near waist level, so they're not lifting that up to set that on there. It's more of a small lift and a slide, where they're not having to exert a lot of pressure to get their purchase up on the counter. The aisles at the checkout need to be wide enough so people who are using a walker or a cane can get in. And that's something a lot of people don't think about. When you're using a cane, it's not a parallel. That cane is not always parallel to that person's legs. When they're leaning, especially if they're carrying something, that cane is angled out, which makes their gait wider. It also increases the total width that they're going to need because that cane is sticking out from their body.
Yeah.
And then like the screens at where you're paying at the register, they need to have large type, and they need to be backlit, and there needs to be high contrast so people can read them. And finally, the keypads. We've all used the keypads at the grocery store or Home Depot or whatever, and they have buttons on them like that.
Yeah.
If you want your older customers to pay with a credit card, which you do, you need something else.
Yeah.
And if you have a screen where they have to punch buttons on the screen, those buttons better be big, and they better be backlit, and they better be high contrast, or your customer's going to have a hard time using them.
And you better not have to push that hard on those
Exactly.
things. Some of those older ones are lame. I mean, last time I was in a Safeway, I don't know, they've got this thing for privacy, right? It covers your hand. I can't see the numbers. I know by feel where they are, but remember, I had these tactile gloves on with the bumps on the insides. I couldn't feel out a a touch pad. If I, with those gloves on. Yeah, there needs to be some pretty major changes that happen at the transaction space right now. Yeah, those are all great points. And, I don't know if you guys, we have Bartell's or maybe Walgreens, CVS, right? Things like that. You'll notice pharmacies are starting to lower their top shelf heights.
Oh, yeah.
Rite Aid, maybe you have them. Mark and I are on opposite sides of the country, but you can tell from his accent and my lack thereof.
Nice one.
But, the 5 foot or, 4.5, 5 foot, 5.5, that top shelf that I, as a 6 foot person at least, can see all the way across the store. That's all about clarity of path and route of travel and awareness of your entire surroundings. Right, you go to Costco and you feel buried in an aisle. Now the widths are better. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff like that to consider. So, all right, so now we've made our purchase. Now we need help getting something to the car, right? That's the last step in the puzzle. That probably mostly is about staff help and just where you stage your staff and what their attitude is and willingness to be a part of the answer, because your goal is repeat clients, and that's how you're going to get it, is that sort of extra massage, pat on the back, whatever you want to call it, that says, hey, thanks for being here. What can I do to help? Please come back. So that's kind of the most, big overview, the general shopping experience, but there's other stuff you should consider too. Architecture, we talk a lot about route of travel, things like refuge and prospect. Where do you sit to feel safe? You'll find seating groups, typically you like them to have a lower ceiling height, good visual of the whole store, back against at least one wall, maybe two. Those are things where you can rest in a route of travel, and folks are going to need that as they're getting older. Comfort level, the height of the seat and the upholstery. Shouldn't be a plastic folding chair that could slip or slide on a tile floor.
Right, that's a great idea.
And you should always have a way to be able to call someone for help. I think that you're going to probably see more push-button stations that, put the light on the pole or whatever, and we'll have to train the staff for that. Yeah. Aisles, you got to make sure there aren't things sticking out off the shelves. Lots of rules I deal with building-wise about how much something can encroach on a clear space. You got to pay attention to that too, because once we're done building a building, you put stuff on shelves, and is that sticking out? Mm-hmm. Is that going to hit that cane that's not in plane with someone's leg?
Exactly.
Right? And then waiting. Mark mentioned waiting. Waiting makes you tired, so we may need a place to sit if you've got wait times that you can't get under control, but I think you should try to get those really pared down. I agree with Mark. We get fussy, we get tired or hot or bothered or whatever, but guess what? That's going to stick with me, and I might not come back if that was an uncomfortable experience.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we probably need to stop there today. Next week, we're going to tackle the third part of accessibility, and that is with your actual business, not the physical accessibility, but the people and the processes. Okay, and that is a really big deal, which I have lots of opinions about in terms of people hacking me off with their phone systems, but I'll get to that later. So we appreciate you all tuning in. Please visit our website and sign up for our weekly Insiders newsletter. It's a great resource where we send out information that we didn't get to cover in the podcast. If you have any questions or would like for us to cover a particular topic, or would like to work with us personally to help you grow your company, just drop us a note at smallbusiness@agentplace.com.
Yeah, and do us a favor. If you like what we're doing right here on the weekly podcast, please do share. It's a free, valuable in-source. We feel like we're providing value. If we are, share it. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or email this to a friend that's a business owner or needs to think about what we're talking about. We'd like to spread the message, help more people. That's why we're here.
All right, so hope that everyone has a great week. And thanks again for being here. Be well, be blessed, and boom your bottom line.
Have a good one.
If you would like to work with Mark and Aaron, have any questions about the show, or have a topic you would like them to cover that would help your business, please send an email to smallbusiness@agentplace.com or call 865-236-1247. You will find the podcast archive, articles, and more to help you as you build your company at agentplace.com/smallbusiness. Booming Your Bottom Line is a joint venture of agentplace.com and Empowering the Mature Mind.